We used to use something called horse liniment. So it was only for horses. Dude was laying on the ground over there. He was drinking water in the corner, and I projectile vomited. That's an extremely, I've never been asked that question.
Here we are with the one and only Brett, the Butcher Wilkins. Probably one of the biggest, faces in the industry for fitness, and probably honestly one of the most humble and admirable athletes and kind of just role models that you can look up to. He's dealt with a lot of adversity, and he's pushing towards this upcoming Olympia in the open division. So the goal is to get top 10. I'm more than confident in that. Yeah, I'm glad to have you here today, Brett.
Yeah, that was a hell of an intro. I like to look at myself more as, just a kid that's always loved to train really, really hard, and I've been able to turn it into a lifestyle, turn it into a career. So I'm lucky enough to bodybuild for a living now, a complete lifestyle, and make money off of it. And something I always dreamed of, and now able to, reaching my peak in my time of this journey of mine of bodybuilding. And I'm glad that I've been able to get, followers and people to follow along my journey, just because I feel like I do it the right way. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, and how we solely do this for the love of training, love of the sport, and love of fitness, and where it's came to now, and the big things that are still coming ahead too. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about today, and give any knowledge that I might have from my from my beginnings, from my journey, that can help you guys in your own moving forward. So I'm excited. Let's do it.
Let's run into it. So going into kind of your upbringing into fitness, many people don't really know, but Brett first started in high school playing 4 different sports, if I'm not wrong, and then went into college in Iowa, I believe.
Yep.
For college football. And I think the question is, what inspired you to shift from kind of that aspect of competing at a good level and going into bodybuilding, that transfer, and also what are some lessons that you took away from that
upbringing?
From the upbringing,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. No, so absolutely. Sports was everything for me growing up. I know a lot of people say that, but my father was a PE teacher and my coach. So it was one of those things that I came home and in our spare time we went and hit baseballs, or we went and played catch with the football, or that's all I knew growing up. And but that's also all I wanted. First word that ever came out of my mouth as a child or as a baby was ball. So some type of sports, balls, whatever, has always been a part of my life coming up, especially. And so with that became an extreme competitive nature. I've always been super, super competitive, and I was able to exert that competitiveness via sports. So I played 4 sports growing up. I did it all, year round: track, football, baseball, basketball. Until I got to college, and obviously, you narrow down the, certain sports when you get to college. And then I moved on and played college football. So I'm originally from Iowa, born and raised, and I played college football there as well. And it was one of those things that that's all I knew. I just knew competitive sports. That's what I loved. That's what I enjoyed. That's what all my friends did. That's what my family in general, my sister played Division I softball, things like that. And so that's all I knew, And what a lot of people don't know is I was also a smaller guy too. So, even in college, I graduated college, 21, 22, right? I even graduated college, I was 165, 170 pounds. I was a all-American punt returner, kick returner, slot receiver. So I was very quick, very shifty, but I wasn't very big, And so, when that college athletics get done, especially for somebody that's 165 pounds, there's probably not going to be much future. There's very minimal that a 5'9" white kid that weighs 165 pounds is going to the pros, right? So it was time to, pivot, to switch and find something else that can fill that void of competitiveness,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of when my own bodybuilding journey started. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I enjoyed to lift weights. And I didn't want to run around and be small anymore. That's why I told myself, I'm not going to sprint around. I'm not going to burn all my energy running around anymore. I'm going to eat more. I'm going to train more. And I'm just going to put on more muscle and feel better about myself, right? So that kind of kicked it all off. And we'll talk a little bit more about the next steps on that. But that's what led into bodybuilding, was my competition phase of my life was over in regards to organized sports and schools. And so it was time to, figure out a passion, because it wasn't something, for a year or two there, I didn't obviously do anything right after college. And I just felt like a huge void. I think a lot of people have that, and then they either work their way through it, or they move on with their lives, whatever, whatever's next. but I couldn't find anything to fill that void in regards to the workspace. You know,
Yeah.
I got into kind of going out to the bars and things with friends and stuff, but like it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
So I knew there was something more for me out there. Right.
We'll touch a little bit now with some of that competitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Shift a little bit, I guess, into also some of the bodybuilding. You've been mentored and kind of influenced by Flex Lewis, and you know that coming from that era to now, do you see some big changes or major differences between his era and where you are now competing?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's not, he hasn't been out of the game too long, so it hasn't changed too much. So to rewind here a little bit, I'll show you how I kind of got to that point. So,
Yeah.
Right when I was doing my own bodybuilding, like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just training 6 days a week and eating a little bit more. Not eating enough, but just eating a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so lucky enough, that's when I actually met my now wife. So Ivana Ivusic at the time. And at that time, she had just turned pro in the figure division of IFBB bodybuilding, whatever. And I had no idea what that meant. It's just I started dating her, and I was like, oh, she does competitions. I don't know really what that means. But then as our relationship continued, I obviously started going to the shows with her, seeing, I saw her qualify for the Olympia, and like she was the only female in the entire state of Iowa that was a pro. There's no males. There was just nothing in the state of Iowa in regards to bodybuilding, but she was still doing it by herself, and she was killing it. And so I had the privilege or the pleasure of being on, being her sidekick. I was the guy holding her bags, right? No one really knew me. I was at that point, I was kind of, working my way up a little, 175, 180 pounds, whatever, doing my own training. But what I'm trying to get to is from her, I was able to start being around the industry, right?
Right.
So her coach at the time was John Meadows. So if you don't know who John Meadows is, I believe he has some of the greatest training philosophies out there. If you just type in mountain dog training, Google it, YouTube it, you will find thousands upon thousands of different exercises, YouTube videos and things. And I think he's always done it right. So like I said, I was lucky enough to be around him a lot. I learned so much from him, obviously him training her, but he spent a lot of time with me behind the scenes, which people don't really realize. I think he really saw something in me, which is really cool. Obviously he is deceased now, so that's why I'm kind of talking in the past tense. But he definitely saw something in me. We would train a lot together. So that's kind of what really, really got me into the bodybuilding, because I was like, this guy, who trains, like at that time he was coaching Samson, like he's coaching top bodybuilders in the world, and he wanted to spend a lot of time with me, and I was learning so much from him. With that, fast forward a little bit, going over the years, then I was meeting, like you said, Flex Lewis. I was able to watch Joe Bennett, hypertrophy coach, and I was around these guys. So I started picking their philosophies. And this is something I want to relay to you guys is like, don't just think that like there's one way to do this, right? Everyone's body responds differently to training. Exercise feel different. They might, one exercise for one person might work a lot better than the other person, just based off their biomechanics and things like that. So remember, there's so many different ways I call skin a cat, right? So there's different styles of training. So what I was able to do was kind of pick off philosophies from all these top guys that have obviously repetitive, they have their track record speak for themselves in regards to training people, their exercise, how they look, And so I was able to kind of take a little bit out of all of them and create my own philosophy, create my own training styles and things that worked for me. And so that's one thing, like even now I still coach quite a few people. And like the first thing I say to them, they're like, hey, yeah, are you sending me a training program? I'm like, yeah, I'm actually sending you 5 training programs, But it's not because I want you to follow one specifically. Right. I want you to kind of mess with all these, test them all out, and see what works for you and start blending your own style. Because bodybuilding can last your entire lifetime. You're going to be trained in so many different ways. That's the beautiful thing about bodybuilding is it can be a lifelong venture, right? And through that lifelong venture, there's going to be so many different, different training styles, different techniques, different exercises. So it's about building yourself and being part of that. Like you have to enjoy, writing your own programming stuff, or else you're just going to burn yourself out and get sick of just, you got to find the passion for it. So that's what I was able really to do is, learn off these guys. And still today, I'm still learning. I'm still training I'm still trading out philosophies based on things, still watch YouTube to see how guys are training all over the world and stuff. And, now people watch me and kind of learn from me, and I hope they're taking from me and apply it to their own self. So it's been really cool. Like I said, it's been now in the industry probably 12 to 15 years where I've seen a lot of different styles and been able to make my own. And then now I'm able to pass that on to people around me, which has been great.
Yeah. Delving into one of those techniques, you emphasize a lot on the time under tension. Do you have a specific tempo that you change differently, depending on the muscle group? For example, I know for like legs, you emphasize a lot of high volume, you know, different exercises. Would you have a different tempo for that versus, let's say, hitting a smaller group like shoulders, for
Yeah.
example?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say now I have it down to my own science in regards to like, I know how I like to train multiple body parts, you know, especially with arms and shoulders. It's going to be a little bit higher volume, a little bit more cable work and things like that, just because of the joints involved. But then when you see me do legs, it's just like as hard and heavy as I can go. You know what I mean? Because like that's what you know. I've learned over time, like what creates the best response, what creates the best variation to tear down the muscle. So then that's what you do. You use your recovery, use your sleep, use your food to rebuild that muscle, right?
Yeah.
So it's about messing with those techniques to see what works with you. What works for me might not work for you, but obviously, like I've figured out things that you know. Obviously, myself, my training partner Martin responds really, really well off of.
Yeah.
And that's just through trial and error and over time, you know. And so it's like I said, like that's again, it comes down to you kind of messing around, trying different philosophies for arms, for shoulders, and see what works for you. But again, you guys can watch my YouTube. I explain it very, very. I go in depth pretty much every session. I explain why I'm doing this. This is how I like to do things. Obviously, figure it out yourself. But these are good pointers that I've always used to get good responses from.
So what are those biggest kind of competition takeaways that have translated from going and competing at these football games and going into, let's say, competing at a show, and some of like, let's say, I don't know, other intimidation, tactics, other competitive
That's actually
stuff?
That's an extremely. I've never been asked that question. That's a great question. Because a lot of times you got to remember, a lot of these bodybuilders weren't actually. I'm not gonna say athletes, you know what I mean, but they didn't play organized sports. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them did. The best ones, I truly think did. Ronnie Coleman played football in college. Phil Heath played basketball in college. So they got that understanding, especially at the college level, right?
Yeah.
Because high school to college level is a big difference in regards to preparation for an event. And that's what college really taught me. Like I played football, but it was a year-round thing, right?
Right.
You know, we were training all offseason. We were getting up at 6 a.m. for lifts and, you know, in the dead of winter, 9 months out from the games, right? So it's just like that created, that taught me the discipline that you need to work all the way towards that goal, right? So we knew we didn't have a game for 9 months. It's kind of the same for bodybuilding, you know? Like, you know, so when you're starting your offseason, like right now, like technically my next competition is the Olympia as of now. That's still 8 months away, right? So it's just like, how do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep yourself disciplined? How do you keep yourself locked in? How do you keep yourself on track? And how do you balance it all?
Yeah.
And that's something that you know, college sports or organized sports at that level really taught me, is because you can't slack, right? What you're doing at this point is going to be directly related to that end look, that end goal, that end result in 9 months. I would say that. So just that discipline involved to be able to hold it out throughout the year and not just be like, you know, you see people that I'm going to do a competition, I'll get ready for 3 months, and then I'll disappear for 6 months. I'll do it all over again, you know? But you don't ever see them making any progress over time, right? It's just always the same thing every year. So the thing is, if you want to make progress over time, you have to be 100% in all time.
Right. You know, speaking of back then, going through, it's like it was kind of just you. Now, you know, it's a little bit more complicated, more people in the family, you know, a new daughter. How has that been kind of, how has that been affecting the prep now? And what have been some kind of pivot points that you might have needed to take in, you know, being a new dad, for example?
Absolutely. So that's obviously that's been the newest venture lately. And I wouldn't even say lately now, she's 21 months now, but you know, having a new daughter in the family has definitely been one of the things that really made me kind of have to shift and like figure out more balance, right? Because bodybuilding is obviously an extremely selfish sport. You know, we're always, you know, we're spending sometimes 4 or 5 hours in the gym between cardio training, you know, recovery, things like that. So it takes away from like your significant other, family, whatever. And so that was definitely something that I didn't want to have to take a hit, is missing time with, you know, the newborn, the baby, as well as spending more time with my wife. So that was probably the biggest shift, was when when a new child arrived, was how am I going to optimize my time the most? And that's what I was able to really learn and do. Is, you know, I would say I probably spend less time in the gym now than I did a couple of years ago, but I'm a lot more efficient. So it's like when I go in there, you know, I have 2 hours in here. What can I get the most out of these 2 hours? That's what I'm always telling myself. You know, I still do morning sessions. I get up a little bit earlier before everybody's moving around and stuff. You know, I'm stretching, I'm doing cardio, I'm doing abs and things. But it's like, hey, I'm being super efficient because I can be done. I can go spend time with my daughter. I'm not taking away. She's not missing out on me. So I think that's been the biggest takeaway from all that is just time management.
Right.
And then being very efficient with your time. Like our training's even more intense now. Every single rep counts a little bit more. You know, when you're a little bit younger, you kind of just fucked around in the gym a little bit longer. You know, you didn't have to go home right away. So it's just like, you know, we'll take our time, but you can't do that anymore. And so, I mean, I think it's probably a good thing, you know,
Right.
It gets you extremely locked in and know what you're doing with each session. So that's what I'd say that's really taught me. And I've been able to balance it all, and I'm really enjoying it. And the biggest thing from that is communication. So communication with your significant other. You know, I still allow her. She still trains. She doesn't compete anymore, but like she comes here in the gym every night for 2 hours. I give her time. You know, let me watch the baby. Let me get my time. Let me enjoy that. You go get your away time. And it's just about communication, open communication, and working together. So that's been huge for us. It's been awesome.
John Meadows training is you're gonna be able to, I don't know how to say, like milk every kind of exercise as much as you can, and it's usually generally like a faster paced kind of environment. So that's at least a positive having that, you know, background and foundation, I guess. I guess now we'll also flip to the present. How has it been working with Stefan at the, or so is it Stefan or Stefan?
Whatever you want to say. I get it wrong every other time. Stefan is, I think how you say it, but
okay.
We know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Boss of Outlaws.
Boss of Outlaws, exactly. How has it been working with him so far? I know it's been relatively recent, switching from Matt, but you know, how has it been, and how is the off season going into this upcoming competition for the Olympia?
So yeah, we got a new coach this year. We've been working together for what 3 or 4 months now. It's been going really good. This is obviously, you know, my best off season yet. This is the biggest and leanest I've ever been. So, and I'm not gonna give all credit obviously to Stefan. He's doing an awesome job. You know, he has great communication. We're on the same page, and it's amazing. I also gotta give props to Matt. You know, Matt Jansen. He brought me into this. We worked together for 6 years or 5 years. You know, he brought me from a 212 guy that got last in my first show to, you know, being an Olympic athlete, you know? So it's like, not Olympic, Olympia athlete, Olympia athlete in the bodybuilding stage. So he did an absolutely fabulous job. I learned so much from him. So now it's just about learning new philosophies from a different coach. And he's doing extremely well. He has a lot of proven pros out there. Obviously, coach is my training partner. So it works really, really good for us because, you know, we're all on the same page. We all see each other. We all talk to each other every day. And he's extremely knowledgeable. So it's been good to learn from a different source. You know, Matt was awesome. You know, we had everything down for 5 years, but obviously everybody's a little bit different in their philosophies especially on the peaking protocols. So I'm excited to see, you know, his peaking here this year ahead. And that's kind of why I want to do a show before the Olympia. Yeah. And that's kind of the plan. We'll do a competition probably August or September timeframe. There's a little tune up before the Olympia. But for right now, I'm extremely happy. Like I said, this has been one of the most productive off seasons I've had, and it's setting up for a big year ahead. So we're excited, man.
Yeah. I mean, even for me, like seeing your growth between even just the Legion Pro and, you know, and then now it's like this new size you've already put on and being so still lean I imagine the amount of calories you're probably eating. Yeah. It's freaky. So I don't know. It's going to be a great year. Kind of, so as you said, you know, your training partner with the same coach, Martin. How did you guys first meet with Martin? You know, like what was kind of the origin story between Batman and?
Yeah, so Martin and I was back in 2019. Yeah, I believe 2019, spring of 2019 probably. So I was living in Denver and I was training out at Armbrust Pro Gym, and still probably my favorite gym of all time is Armbrust Pro Gym in Denver. If you've never been there, and you know, I was just coming up. Like I said, that was my first year. I was getting ready for my first pro show, 212 show. And we had these posing classes on Saturday. So we did these posing classes at the gym. It was just for an hour. Anybody could join, you know. And so I was there. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, Martin was in there. And I obviously didn't know Martin at the time, but I'm like, man, that guy looks pretty good. You know, huge legs. I remember that, big old legs on him. And at that time, I didn't really have a training partner. I was just kind of, you know, just enjoying my time there. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, man, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Wyoming. I drove down from Wyoming. And so, and then like, I don't think it was that time, but the next Saturday he was there again. And so I realized he was driving down from Wyoming every Saturday, which is like 4-hour drive just to come down to the posing class there in Denver. So I asked him like, hey, you want to train today after the class? We trained back after class that day. And then that was history, bro. Like I knew right there, everything clicked. And it's weird. You know, we had very similar training styles. We're both ex-college athletes, both, you know, like it's going back into the competitive side of things. We're just dudes that just love to train, love to eat, love to just have fun in the weight room. So we hit it off perfectly there. I think he ended up moving down. He ended up just staying on my couch every weekend for the next like 4 or 5 weeks. And then he actually moved down to Denver and we just continued to train until he ended up going pro. I went to the Open.
Mhm.
And now he's top 4 in the world. So it's been really awesome to see his transformation as well. And then now he lives down here so we can still train together. And then our next venture is actually, I don't think I've told you this yet, but we're actually moving to Houston, Texas here coming up.
Dude.
And we're going to open the gym there. So that's kind of our next venture, is moving to Houston to open the gym and continue to obviously train and prepare for Olympias, for shows and things like that. So it's been really cool to have somebody that's you can fully trust and loyal to, right?
Mhm.
I have a very small circle. I mean, you know this, and you said earlier, it's like I'm acquaintances with everybody, and I'm overall a nice guy, I feel like, but I keep my tight circle very close. And he's included in that, and we're doing a lot of stuff, behind the scenes, and we're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And we're just enjoying it together, man. We're enjoying these processes. We have a good crew. We have Vinny behind the camera here that films us, his crew and stuff. So we have a good tight knit circle, and I think that's huge in bodybuilding because it keeps you extremely focused and keeps the noise away, right?
Yeah.
So we don't like drama. We don't like the bullshit. It's just like we're gonna stick to our processes and continue to get better every day.
Yeah.
And it's gonna pay off in the end.
Yeah.
It's been great.
It is. Do you have a specifically like the hardest session that you and Martin have ever gone through together? And was there any like big tension between that? Have you guys had any big tension? And like how have you guys resolved it?
We've had, back in Armis, we had so many super competitive. Back then we were a little bit more like who can do more each rep, each set, right? Now it's not so much that because we're not trying to injure each other and we're both getting a little bit older. But back then, man, like if he did 10 reps, I was guaranteed to get 11. And it didn't matter what weight was on there. So we definitely beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there was one that we actually like got mad at each other or anything like that. At the end of the day, we're still supporting each other and things like that. I think my most memorable training session was with Branch Warren, actually. I trained he came out to Armbrust in 2019 as well. And I probably at the time, I didn't know, I thought I was training hard until I trained with Branch. And I remember it was only a 55-minute session, maybe tops. We were doing back.
Yeah.
And I remember about 30 minutes in, I decided that I was either going to puke or I was going to poop. I'm dead serious. Like my body was like, it just wanted to get rid of everything in me because we were moving so fast and we were training so heavy. And there just wasn't there was no organization. It was just go, go, go. Like that's just how he trains, I've never done like that. So we got to the point where I'm like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom real quick. So I ran to the bathroom and I just kind of sat there and I didn't know what I was going to do. Luckily I just pooped, no puke, I guess, but got it out of me and I went out there and he was standing there still on I remember it was a row machine. And he's like, it's still your motherfucking set. And he waited for me and then went right back into it. So I was like, that was the only time that I've obviously puked multiple times on legs and things like that. But I've never had it where my body just wanted to get everything out of me. Like it was just it just failed. So that's probably I tell people that story all the time is like, who do you think trains the hardest? I'm like Branch Warren, and he was retired at the time too. This was like I said, he was already 5 years retired. Like he still trains like that. So it just shows you again, it always shows you that people do things differently. There's probably someone always out there training harder than you. I guarantee it. And he showed me that. And I learned a lot that day,
right.
Especially when it came to intensity.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest lesson he taught me was for sure intensity.
Moving from the intensity, but then going a little bit into the recovery aspect, which is, I think it's like a lot of things that people do wrong is they just focus on the intensity, but they don't think about the recovery as much to like maintain that intensity, right? So I think delving into one of the things that you've kind of done as part of your creation in your journey is creating Butcher Balm, which helps the whole point is also helping with this recovery. Like what was the moment when that really pivoted you to be like, you know what, this is something that I really want to go into and kind of address, with lifting.
Yeah. So the story behind Butcher Balm. So this is a product of mine that I sell. The story behind it was actually in those years, we were training extremely hard in Denver. Is we used to use something called horse liniment. So it was only for horses. So it was like this green gel that it just numbed you out. But it was for horses. They were supposed to go on horses' joints to numb out their joints for races. Right. So we would put that on our knees before we trained legs, just so we didn't feel anything. I mean, probably not the smartest thing, but I mean, it was it was a way that we would move a lot of weight and like get through the sessions, right? So from that, you know, when we were using it, I'm like, man, someday I want to create something that is for humans but has more effects than that, right? And so, you know, fast forward, you know, 4 or 5 years to the last year, I actually came up with this formula of the Butcher Balm. So what this is a pharmaceutical grade icy hot. So it's a pharmaceutical grade icy hot that also has healing peptides in it. So it has BBC 157 and TB 500 inside of it as a transdermal. So it's actually a topical version that absorbs through the skin. So it's the first of its kind that actually is a healing peptide that absorbs, while all other healing peptides are injectable. So it takes needles out of it. You just apply this to any injuries you may have. It could be muscle related, obviously joint related, tendon, ligament. And so what it also does is, like I said, it still numbs things out. So if you can put it on pre-training, again, to numb things out, or you can do it post-training or later in the day to actually get those transdermal peptides to initiate recovery and actually heal those injuries. So this has been huge for me. Like I said, I launched this in April. It's been an amazing product. I've had 0 refund requests in 9-10 months. So that shows how well a product is. And it's something that, you know, that I'm going to continue to blow up ahead because it's the first of its kind. I'm sure down the road it'll be copied a lot, which is fine. I already know that's coming. But for now, you can try it out. And like I said, a lot of people love it, and it's helped me a lot in my training as well.
Honestly, I would say it's revolutionary. There's some other packs out there, but none of them have those peptides in there, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, this is really, I think, a game changer. And I mean, hey, all you need to see is just look at the Olympia and check out, you know, their legs, for example, right?
Yeah, right. So with this product as well is like another reason why I created this as well as these. So these are Butcher hooks. So these are just training straps. Mm-hmm. So these are for like back day or anything you need a grip. I've just simplified it down. So all you do is walk up to something, you just wrap it, twist, and you're good. When you're done, you just let go. The reason I'm telling you this is because I've been able to turn things into brand products, right? So you want to use your own brand because obviously I'm not going to bodybuild forever. So there'll be a day when we're done bodybuilding. So it's what was I able to do to carry on, you know, my brand, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I created these products. They have something that go post bodybuilding, like the gym that's next. So I kind of envisioned all this, you know. A lot of people dive into the bodybuilding if you do it competitively, and they solely just bodybuild, which there's nothing wrong with that. But they're not setting themselves up for something that when they're done, you know. Mm-hmm. So when you get done with bodybuilding, what's next? You know, you don't have anything to go off of. You're done competing, so you're not making money that way. Right. So that's why you're always thinking about branding yourself and doing things that way.
Right. What inspired the Butcher, you know, identity? Like what came, you know, one day to be like, you know what, I'm Brett the Butcher.
The nickname came from my open debut. I ended up getting second at the Chicago Pro. This was in 2021, and I got second to Hunter Labrada, but it was like, you know, I wasn't even on the radar coming in. Like that was when I was going from 212 to open. I took 2 years off. People didn't even remember who I was or whatever. I came out there, you know, I beat a lot of proven guys. You know, I beat Rolly Winkler. I beat a lot of other Olympians. And so that was kind of my coming out party. Yeah. And there was one guy back there, he kept running backstage. So he had a backstage pass. And what was crazy about that show was I think the judges didn't they were so surprised that I was looked that good, or I was working my way up, that they just continued to pose us. Because I thought they are like, we're going to pose until either Brett drops out or everyone else drops out, you know? So luckily enough, I didn't, you know, I was there to win, right? Or I thought I was there to win. And I was not going to fail. I was not going to drop out. I was not going to get tired. So what we did, every time we came back off stage, all the other guys would lay down or they're breathing hard, bend over. And my buddy, his name was Joey, he came back. He'd come backstage, just talk to me or fan me down or whatever. And he kept saying, he's like, dude, every time I walk back there, he's like, it looked like you butchered the competition. That's what he said. He's like, there's a dude was laying on the ground over there. He was drinking water in the corner. Everyone was so tired, but you were just standing there ready for more, you know? Yeah. So he's like, and then he's like, that's kind of when he was like, we're going to call you Brett the Butcher. Yeah. And I was like, I need a nickname, and that actually sticks, right? So it's like, you can either look at it that way of that's where it came from. People think, Butcher because of obviously leanness, striations of muscles and things like that. But it flows well, and it's something you can build a brand off of, and it's actually worked out really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If you're good, maybe we can delve into a little bit of the difficulties and, having to pull out of the Olympia in 2023. So if I'm not mistaken, in 2023, you lost around 15, almost 17 pounds because of a GI issue, right? what was kind of like, what was your thought process when that happened, and how did you come out of that?
Yeah. No, I definitely lost a lot more than that. Yeah, I ended up getting all the way down to about 230 pounds. Like, um, so yeah, I was qualified for the Olympia in 2023. It was my first Olympia. Dream come true, right? That was everything always been working for. I had actually I qualified at the end of 22, so I had a whole year to get ready for that Olympia. So I was preparing for it. You know, things were going up. You know, things were going good early in the year. So we ended up starting prep for the Olympia. And I noticed things were just not responding right. And you know that, especially when you've been competing for a while, especially when you know your body well. You know, I wasn't absorbing food. I What ended up happening was actually like I would eat meals and I'd actually throw them back up, or they would just pass through me and my the stool was not a good stool and things like that. So not to get into too many details, but what ended up happening, it got so bad that like I had to keep reeating my meals throughout the eat. So I was eating 8, 9, 10 meals a day, puking up 3 or 4 of them. You know, just trying to make that stage because it meant so much to me. So that was extremely hard that I ended up having to. I think the breaking point was, and I'll be honest with you, I was driving to the gym to train legs one day, and I was actually like, I was driving my truck and I projectile vomited and I also shit at the same time. I'm just gonna be honest with you, in my truck. So I pulled over, I turned around, I went back home. I walk in the house, my wife's like, "What the hell? What happened to you?" I'm like, "I'm done. You know, I got to pull. I'm done." So I had to pull out. You know, I had to make that call to pull out of Olympia and just stop prepping, just to fix my digestive, fix my GI system, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do because you got to think I've spent the last 8 years getting ready for that moment, right?
Yeah.
It was everything to be on the Olympia stage. That was it was the Super Bowl, you know. So the drop out of the Super Bowl was something extremely difficult to me because that's my identity as well, right? That's
Yeah.
I mean that's solely what I've created my identity to be, my brand and everything. Um, so that was an extremely hard moment for me. And what I had to do is I had to address it. You know, I mean, like it was either I'm done forever or I figured this shit out, right? So I worked with a specialist, a nutrition specialist, a gut specialist, got a GI map done. Um, Found out that pretty much, you know, to be clear, is my stomach lining was pretty much gone. So I wasn't absorbing any food, right? So I actually needed to rebuild that gut lining. So I had to go through a very extensive process of a lot of probiotics. I had to do a lot of GI drinks. Obviously, I had to lower my food volume down for a while, just to fix things and just give a break. So what I came to find out was I had spent so many times just doing preps and then pushing back into in the off season where I'd get right done with the show.
Yeah.
I would start eating food and try to get big again. You know, I never took any breaks of food, which I should have at least took like a month or 2 off where I was just eating 3 or 4 meals, just chilling for a while.
Yeah.
I always thought to myself, you know, I've started a little bit later in my life, so I got to do this as quick as I can. And so I was always set on, hey, how do I get better each day? Which I really should have been taking breaks. And so I had to learn the hard way from that. My GI system was pissed off. I had everything. You know, I had anything you could think of in regards to that. But I was able to rebuild it, reset it. Obviously, I had to go down. I went all the way down like 225, 230 pounds. Was extremely depressed at that time.
Yeah.
Because obviously, hormones were all over the place, right? Because I wasn't training.
Yeah.
Obviously, while I wasn't, no PEDs were involved, things like that. And so like my hormones were tanked. So I was sitting at home, hormones were terrible, depressed, wasn't myself, small, that I thought, So I decided I gotta, obviously I gotta continue to fix this gut issues, but I gotta flip my mindset, right?
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've ever done this. That was at the end of 23. All right, I said January 1st, 2024. I'm gonna do a New Year's resolution, right? On January 1st, everything changes, right? And I stuck to it. January 1st came around, and I built up. This was just this past January 21st, 24. And we started, and I was like, I'm gonna give it all I got, prove that I can still do this. I can still win shows. I can get back to the Olympia stage. And that's what we did. We started January 1st last year. We built up all the way until September, right, of the Legion Sports Fest, and I was able to win that and qualify for the Olympia this year. So obviously taught me a little bit less in regards to taking care of yourself, but it also taught me lessons of, willpower, obviously determination, and discipline. So it was very interesting, a setback that I think, probably was needed. Definitely a little mental flip too. And here we are. Now we're preparing for that Olympia that I'm going to make this time. So can't wait for it.
It's amazing. What was the kind of like the biggest, what would be an advice for people who are dealing with like a depression when they have a setback like that and not kind of quitting or giving up,
Yeah.
or having that doubt, you know, linger in their minds.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just continue to believe in yourself. You know what I mean? I lost it there for a little bit, and it's just you gotta find yourself, and also go back to the basics. You know, that was the thing is like, don't try to do things too fast. You know, you're obviously not gonna get back to who you used to be right away.
Right.
So it's about just diving into the process. You know, stop thinking so much far ahead and just think day to day. Right? How am I gonna get better today? How I'm gonna finish all my meals today. I'm gonna train really hard today. And I'm just gonna continue to repeat this. You know, one day turns into 10 days. 10 days turns into 30 days. All of a sudden you're 2 minutes in and you're back to where you know, you're looking back to where you used to be, right?
Yeah.
So it's just about taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. And that's where a lot of people get lost. You know, they don't, you know, they get worried about how long it's gonna take. You know, they're overthinking things. So it's just like I said, just slow down, know who you are, and just take it day by day.
So I guess circling back, I guess, to some of the PEDs, what's a misconception that you see that you come across frequently within the industry that you wish people kind of understood better or were more aware of?
In regards to PEDs, I think the biggest thing is people think that, it's hard to, I can't say us bodybuilders because you don't know. You know, everyone kind of has different protocols in regards to PEDs, but everybody thinks that we're taking way more than we actually are. And that's the truth. You know, and I can say that for myself. I can say that for Martin. I can say that for the people around me is, you know, PEDs are supplements, right? They're only going to supplement everything else you're doing. Right. And I think that's when people get the biggest misconception. They're like, oh, I can take PEDs. Like, if I take PEDs, I'll look like that, you know? No, it's like you have to make sure that everything else is 100% across the board before that point, right? Yeah. And I think that's something I did really well. I was like, I actually didn't even start PEDs until I was like 26, I believe 25 or 26. So I actually maximized my natural potential. Yeah. And people don't, no one does that anymore. You know, like like I said, like when I told you after football, I built up to 190 and like 190 with a 6-pack, you know, looking good, whatever. But naturally, right? Yeah. Until I, you know, hit a wall for about a year and it wasn't progressing anymore. So that's when, you know, took the next step. But like I said, and like the thing with these is also you got to remember to do the least with the most. I'll take that back. You want to do the most with the least. So I mean, like if you're gonna start things or include things, get the most out of it before you move on to something else, right? Right. So it's just small incremental things at a time add up for the long haul. Because you don't want to just, hey, I heard this pro's doing this, so I'm gonna copy them and do this, and I'll look just like him. It does not work that way. People don't understand the time, you know, the commitment that goes into this, you know. I've even eaten 6-7 meals a day for the last 10, 12 years, and I still think I'm not big enough, right? So it's like, it takes a long, long time, and it takes, you know, and it takes being smart of using the PEDs too, taking breaks, you know, coming off, doing post cycles, things like that. So I feel like I've done it the right way for the most part. And it's just something that it's great to have a coach also guide you that's been there and knows things too. Don't just blindly jump into it and think that you can do whatever you want with this, because it'll bite you in the ass. And it's stuff that you can't get back either. You know what I mean? Like right. It's permanent too.
Would you say is the biggest, I think, trend among successful competitors, or should you say is the number one factor when it comes to succeeding as a bodybuilder or succeeding in fitness?
The biggest trend for the successful ones, I mean, it's so cliche, but I'm going to say it's just consistency over time. Mm-hmm. You know, I could probably answer that question with everything, but it truly is. You know, think about the guys that are at the very, very top, and they're the ones that are the most consistent, not only in the training, but all the small details, especially with recovery stuff. You know, look at Chris Bumstead, right? Like, he was so good at doing everything outside of the gym as well, right? Yeah. You know, he was always working on his posing, always working on his craft, especially working on, he had the sauna, the cold tub, everything. So it's like, there's so many things that go into this, that overall look at the end when it comes to competitive bodybuilding. And it's about a lot of detail work to get there. And a lot of times these guys just skip the details, skip the recovery aspects, skip the stuff that's not fun, and just focus on the things that they enjoy, and they're never going to reach their potential. So it's about being versatile across the board to get to that point.
Exactly. It's funny because I think one of the biggest things in the fitness industry that we see people clash upon is kind of the fact that they're like, it's my way or the highway. And there's kind of some negligence, you know, in terms of like being able or wanting to try other things, because it's like going back to what you first said, you know, every person is kind of different. So it's important to try out different things. Of course, I mean, when it comes to like getting your blood work done and your rehab and all these things, like there's certainly like a method to, you know, to doing so. But I think it's important, you know, when things aren't working, like as you said, when things aren't working, like with the GI thing, to kind of take it day by day. And if you need, don't feel like you need to be the one doing it yourself. Take it with the coach, ask for advice, ask for other advice and input to kind of get you to where you want to be. Of course, credible advice and input, because I think that's another thing too on social media, is that there's just so much information.
Oh yeah.
So it's like important to, you know, look at someone like Brett, for example, to kind of get the right piece of information to get to where you want to be. How has Ivana influenced your performance with bodybuilding when you were, when you said that you were like smaller, right? Mm-hmm. How did she like influence and inspire you to get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I mean, first part is if you're going to be a competitive bodybuilder, you have to have a significant other that understands it too. You know, lucky enough, she was already a competitor before me, so she knew the processes that goes into it. So she was able to relate, and I think that's the hardest part, especially starting out. You know, so early on, she at least knew what was kind of going into it. The biggest thing she taught me, to be honest with you, I tell people this all the time, is she taught me how to eat. So even when I met her, man, I was still only eating like 3 meals a day. I was eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I might have been eating a little bit more than I was in college and stuff, but I wasn't really responding very quickly. You know, it was just like a couple pounds a month or a pound a month I might be gaining, you know? Yeah. So one day she kind of like, you know, we were hanging out. It was probably our second or third time hanging out. And she finally like broke down. She's like, "Do you ever eat?" I'm like, "Hey, I eat. Yeah, I eat. I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, like, what do you mean? Do I eat?" She's like, "I eat 5 or 6 meals a day. My meals are out in the car, but I'm scared to eat them because I don't want to just eat in front of you by myself." And I was like, "You eat 5 or 6 times a day?" I'm like, "That's what it takes." I'm like, "Shit, I'm gonna eat 5 or 6 times a day." I'm like, "Go grab your food." So I started eating 5 or 6 times a day, and honestly, that's really what took me off. Yeah, is going from eating 3 meals a day to like 5 or 4, then 5, and then all of a sudden I saw my weight increase, my strength increase, obviously, and it's just I didn't have that nutritional advice or I didn't have that nutritional knowledge yet, you know. Exactly. And so to have her and like kind of like give me a fucking slap in the back to get going a little bit on that took off. It was hugely for me, and I'll still never forget that. She honestly taught me how to eat. And then now I'm to the day where I do nothing but eat. So that's where we're at now. But that's definitely was one of the biggest changes for sure.
Oh, amazing. I remember seeing one of the videos. I think it might have been when you guys went to Los Angeles. I think I saw a video of you doing kind of like a little dancing something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to ask you, between you and Martin, who would win in a dancing competition?
Ooh, that's a good question. So speaking of that, this week, actually, we have a video coming out on his YouTube of us doing the NFL Combine things. So we did like that shuttle, like the 5, 10, 15. We did the Icky Shuffle. We did vertical jump. And we did bench press. And so he actually beat me in bench press, which I was surprised. He beat me by a couple reps. But I won the Icky Shuffle and the shuttle by a good margin. Because I'm a little bit quicker. I still got a little quickness in me. So I think based off of that, and because he was like I said, he was like a fullback and a shot putter back in college. So I don't think his feet are too fast. I think I have better feet. So I definitely think I'd be a little bit better dancer than him for sure. Maybe I'm excited for that video because like we were competing, bro. I got to a point where I was like, "Hey, you might get hurt." Like he was trying to cut and stuff and falling down. I was like, let's not get hurt doing this. Let's have fun, but let's not get hurt. So it was a blast though, and it showed that I still got a little athletic ability left, but probably not much more than 15 yards, but that's okay. You know what I mean? We can still hang with it. I mean, I think we probably both almost beat the bench press record, if I had to guess. So that was fun.
I love it. Be sure to check out Brett and check out that video against Martin, because I'm sure that's going to be not only like funny, but also very insightful. And yeah, Brett, where can we find you, you know, on your journey leading up to the next Olympia?
Yeah, so, you guys can follow me on so mainly just on Instagram. It's at Brett_Wilkin, YouTube page as well that you guys can tune into. Got a lot of content from here, a lot of training and stuff. And then this year ahead, obviously a road to the Olympia, the road to the move and everything involved. So that's just Brett the Butcher Wilkin on YouTube. And again, I appreciate you having me on yours and stuff too. And I'm looking forward to seeing you grow your own channel. and and having a big future ahead too, buddy.
I appreciate that. Well, if we can grow like you, how you've been doing in the past few months, man, there's no secret. All right, guys, tune in next time. Be sure to check out Brett. Be sure to check out his hook grips and his butcher balm for the best performance. And we'll catch you guys next time. See you guys.